gosh, I'm gonna sneeze. I'm not gonna sneeze. Hi, I'm Kelsey. I have my booktube hat, and today I am coming to you with my May TBR. I have a lot of books here, and I have a reason for that. I will justify it to you. My reason is that a lot of these things are YA or middle grade, that I would normally read very, very quickly, so I'm hoping that this actually won't be as much reading as it looks like. And this one, I'm only reading one of the 3 books in this, so this is a little deceptive, I think. But basically, this is a list of books that I want to read in approximately this order, and I'll get as far through them as I can in May, and we'll see where I end up. The first 2 I am already reading. Her Fearful Symmetry by Audrey Niffenegger is the one book that's carrying over from my April TBR. I started it in April, but I'm not very far in. Hopefully I'll finish this pretty soon. I'm also in the middle of Dreams of Gods and Monsters by Laini Taylor, and this is going very quickly, despite how physically large it is, because it is YA, and I read YA very quickly. As you can see, I'm not quite halfway through, but I'm almost there. This is the 3rd and final book in the Daughter of Smoke and Bone trilogy, which is a YA fantasy series that I really enjoy. And because this is the final book, when I finish it, I get to do a full series review. Yay! But I'm really enjoying Laini Taylor's writing style. These are the first books of hers that I've read. But I'm very much looking forward to picking up some of her previous books when I finish this series, and I'm also very much anticipating her upcoming book, which is going to be the first in a duology. So far I'm really glad to have discovered this author. I'm enjoying her books, and I'm glad that there are going to be more of them for me to read when this one is done. I mentioned last month that I put a hold on Nimona at the library in hopes that it would come in time for Genrethon, which it did not. This is a YA fantasy graphic novel by Noelle Stevenson. I'm guessing it will be very, very quick. I don't actually know how quickly I read graphic novels because I don't really read them. I read Persepolis for school twice, both in high school and college, but that's really my only graphic novel reading experience, and so my hope is that this will be a good entryway into that world, and from there I can figure out what types of graphic novels I might be interested in reading. I've already read the first few pages, and I'm really intrigued, but I'm not going to let myself keep reading until I finish one of these other books. And this is the one that's really deceptive on this super large stack, because I'm only planning on reading one of the 3 books in this bind-up of the Apportioned Chronicles by Garth Nix. I read Sabriel last summer, and I'm planning on continuing on with this series and reading Lirael, which is the 2nd book. Because it's been a while since I read Sabriel, some of the details of the plot are really a little fuzzy in my mind. I'm hoping that the 2nd book will provide enough refresher that I won't have to go back and look through the 1st book for things I missed, but I have it here in case I need it. I believe that Lirael follows a new protagonist and takes place some number of years after Sabriel. And Sabriel was also a very quick read for me, so I'm hoping that the second 2 books will be as well. The next book is a brand new release that I've got from the library, and that is The Rose and the Dagger by Renée Adieh. I believe this came out on April 26th, and it was waiting for me at the hold section of my library branch on April 27th, and that is what I call speedy service. This is the 2nd book in Renée Adieh's duology, the saga of Shahrazad and Khalid. The 1st book, The Wrath and the Dawn, was a retelling of the story of Scheherazade from the Arabian Nights. I'm super curious to see where this story goes from there. It was very quick reading for me. I will link for you the video where I wrapped up the 1st book. And because this is the final book in a duology, you can also expect a series review when I get done with this. I found the 1st book to be a really quick read, pretty engaging, and kind of a good guilty pleasure YA fantasy. And I'm hoping for more of the same with this one. Next book is one I've had sitting around for several years now and haven't read, and that is Peter and the Starcatchers by Dave Barry and Ridley Pearson. I bought this used copy after seeing the stage adaptation of this book, Peter and the Starcatcher, singular, on Broadway, and it was one of my favorite plays I have ever seen. It was absolutely magical. So that made me really want to pick up the book, but on the other hand, I feel like a lot of what I really liked about the play was probably stuff that was added for the stage and not necessarily in the book, but I won't know until I read it. I'm also fascinated that the play was aimed at an adult audience, whereas this is decisively a middle grade book. It's the first in a middle grade series. But I have actually been hankering to read some middle grade fantasy for a while now, and I've been waiting for some of it to come to the top of my TBR pile, and it's here. I've got some. So I'm happy to be reading this after putting it off for so long. This is a sort of prequel origin story for Peter Pan. I don't know how many books are in this series or what the other books are about. Right now I'm only planning on reading the first book, but if I love it, I might continue on with the series. 2 more books, we're almost there, guys. So here I have another library book, and that is The Philosopher Kings by Jo Walton. This is not YA, this is adult, but it's actually pretty short. This is only 345 pages. And this is the second book in her Thessaly trilogy. The first book was The Just City, and I read that a few months before I started BookTube. The premise is that, oh boy, let me try to explain this premise. This has to do with the classical Greek gods. The gods live outside of time and therefore can kind of travel through time. And Athena decides to set up an experiment to see what would happen if Plato's Republic were set up in reality. The question is sort of, in what ways will it fail? And so she plucks Plato scholars from throughout history and sticks them on an island in the far past with a bunch of children rescued from slavery to start the Just City. And Apollo is also there in the form of a human child to try to learn about humanity. And it was fascinating, and it was also, I thought, fairly accessible. Even though it was all about Plato and philosophy, I felt like I could follow the first book perfectly well, having never actually read Plato's Republic. And I thought that was just miraculous that Jo Walton was capable of introducing all of the ideas in that text in a really practical, accessible way in the form of fiction. And I was really surprised at how emotionally engaged I was with the characters in the story. It ended on something that felt like an amazing cliffhanger, and then this book, I think, takes place a good deal of years later. So I'm thinking we'll get to see what happened. The third book in this trilogy, entitled Necessity, is coming out later this year, so I will be prepared for it when I manage to read this. The last book I have is one that's very popular on BookTube, and that's Uprooted by Naomi Novik. The only reason that I haven't read this yet, like months ago, is because I make books wait their turn so that I don't have things that stagnate in the TBR eternally. I'm very excited to read this, despite the fact that the more negative BookTube reviews have started to emerge from the shadows, because it's basically the type of book that's usually my exact cup of tea. It's a mostly original fairy tale, and I think it has elements of Beauty and the Beast, but it's not a direct retelling. I love books that are fairy tale influenced but are not direct retellings or are looser retellings. It's also a standalone from an author who is known for her ongoing fantasy series. I forget the name of Naomi Novik's series right now, but it's alternate history with dragons, which is something that appeals to me, but I haven't decided whether or not I want to read it. So I'm happy at the opportunity to read a standalone that she's written to see if I like her writing, to see if I might want to dive into that series. And also the cover is gorgeous. I know a lot of people on BookTube really prefer the UK cover. I think the UK cover is pretty, but I love how much detail there is in this. Like, the longer you look at it, the more there is to see. That's very superficial. And also, the title sounds like it's vying to be the next Disney princess movie. I don't know how I feel about that. But anyways, I'm hoping that I'll get through all of these so I can at least start Uprooted this month. So that is my perhaps overambitious TBR for the month. Let me know if you've read any of these books or if you're planning on reading any of these books and what you think or thought. And that is all. Bye for now.